Hello, welcome back to Garden Obsessed. My name is Carla. Today we are gonna do some potting up. So I have some strawberries here that need potted up. I've got some pepper plants that need to be divided and put in their own pots. And most importantly, I have to start potting up my tomatoes. I started them all in 3/4 inch soil blocks, and I have 200 of these bad boys to get through today. So we're gonna do that. And then at the end of the video, I know this isn't maybe why some people are here and they might not be interested, but I did take a few videos and a few photos yesterday of our experience viewing the solar eclipse. And it was an experience, and I definitely wanna share that. I feel like, you know, an eclipse is sort of related to gardening in a way, right? Like we're talking about the sun and nature and all of that. So I definitely want to talk about that at the end of the video, but I'll save it for the end. So those of you that are not interested can watch, you know, the gardening part if that's what you're here for, and then you can just skip the rest. But first, let's bring it down closer and talk about what we've got here. Okay, so I have a tray here ready to go. These are 6-packs. So there are 48 cells in this tray altogether. I do this in my living room and at the dining room table. I do not, have a greenhouse or a special dedicated space that I do all these things. And basically I just wait till the floor is dirty anyway and needs vacuumed. And then I have a big potting up day or seeding day or whatever. And as soon as I'm done, we'll get the vacuum out and it'll be no big deal. But I like to, I have a bale of soil out on my front porch, and I just keep refilling a tote to fill my pots and things indoors and make sure that it's not frozen. It's not such a big deal this time of year, but you know, earlier in the season when I was seeding everything and making my soil blocks, it was very possible that soil outside would be frozen. So this is just my process, what I like to do. I have just a scoop that I got at the dollar store. I just keep that in here and I use that to fill my tray. Then I brush it flat, and this has just been run under the sprayer by my sink. So this is like fairly saturated soil. It's not, you know, too wet and it's not too dry, but it is wet enough that I'm not gonna have to worry about this for a day or two after I transplant my tomatoes. The tomatoes are gonna go in here. And the reason I wanna make sure that it's good and saturated is because these guys are gonna be a little shocked and unhappy once I move them. We're gonna be probably tearing some roots, and I don't want moisture to be another stress that they're experiencing at the same time, if that makes sense. So these guys are gonna be going here. Now, these are the strawberries. They have been potted up once into these 6-pack cells. So these are the same things that I have here. And it's time for them to be bumped up further. They could probably spend a little more time in here, but these are going to be these are the extras. I have some set aside for us here, and I'm sure I'll take you guys along when we plant those outdoors, but these are extras that I'm going to be taking up to the plant cells. So I want to put them in their individual pots. We're going to be using these ones. These were super cheap and they look super cheap, but this is all we need, and this is to be sold. So this is what I have. This is what I'm using. So I have 6 of these. I have 6 of these pots that these are going to go into. These are also extra peppers. So I had poor germination when I first started them this year. And so I started a whole bunch more in paper towels. And as they germinated, I just stuck them into whatever pots I had. So I think originally I had put 4 in here. There's only 3 that actually came up, which, you know, that's fine. But because I did that and started like overkill more when I had the poor germination the first time, we are swimming in peppers. So I have like 100 extra peppers. So these are also gonna go in these pots, and they will be extras that will go up to the plant sale that we have, my cousin and I, this year. So I have 3 of these pots set aside for these guys as well. So let's do these first. So what I like to do, these ones will be a little different. We'll do those in a second. But because these cells are quite large, right? Like there's a lot of soil in here. I'm not gonna quite fill these. And I'm also not going to damp them down first, like I did with this tray. I'm going to just fill it maybe 2/3, and then I'll show you what we do. So. I'll get these filled first and then we'll come back. Okay, so now we have our pots. And what I like to do is, you know, kind of the shape of the 6-pack cell. I'm just going to start pulling the soil up the sides of the pot and making a little well in the middle that I think that cell will fit well into, if that makes sense. So then I'm gonna make sure I loosen the edges. And these haven't been in here for super long, so they're not gonna have a really well-developed root system. So I'm gonna try to kind of push on the bottom, and I do like to reuse my 6-packs as much as possible, so I try not to tear them or damage them too badly in any way, while also still being able to handle the plants. So just be nice and gentle. You can see the roots, it's actually a little better developed than I thought it would be. They really haven't been in here very long. So that's awesome. I'm gonna stick those down in here, give a little gentle push, and make sure there's soil around the edges of the plant. Sometimes I need to come back with a little more soil. Just gently tamp that down. And with the strawberries, it's really important to not cover the crown. A lot of plants that we're transplanting, including the tomatoes, you can bury them much deeper than they are currently, but strawberries is not one of those things. So because I didn't tamp this down, or because I didn't pre-moisten this soil, you can do it under the sink too, but I do have this little sprayer from the dollar store. Just make sure that's nice and pressurized. So I'll give that a little water now. So that's the strawberry done. And I'll just keep going along here until I get all 6 transplanted. Okay, so this strawberry is a little smaller than those other ones, and I don't think it's gonna have a root system that's gonna allow me to get this out very easily. I think a lot of soil is gonna stay in this cell, so I've got my pot a little fuller than the other ones. This is actually pretty full. I'm gonna make a little spot here for it, and I'm gonna use my trusty popsicle stick. I have loosened it, but I'm gonna kind of go in the side here and try to kind of lift it out. There. So about half of the soil did stay in that pot there, but we're just gonna tuck this guy in. Make sure he's got support around him here. And there he's already too. The other thing is these guys were all really quite well watered before I did this. And that's like especially important when we do the tomatoes and these peppers, because we're gonna be trying to tease apart the roots, and having them really well watered makes that a lot easier. The other thing I'm careful to do always is label everything as I go. So the strawberries are gonna be fairly obvious, and I'm only growing one kind, but something like the peppers, where I'm growing like, I don't know, 15 different varieties, it's gonna be super important to make sure that I label those as they're planted up, and same with the tomatoes. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my strawberries labeled. These are Regina strawberries. Okay, so next I'm gonna tackle these strawberries. I only have 2 kinds on this tray. These are all paste tomatoes. I've got San Marzano on this half and I have Roma on this half. So we are going to start maybe with the San Marzanos because they're a little larger. Not that that matters, but I just like to kind of lift up that half. And if I put my fingers underneath where the middle is, these were 2 different blocks and they come apart a little easier in the center when you're just beginning to separate. And because these were just watered, they're nice and saturated, and it's fairly easy to pull apart the roots without hurting them. I think you can see those. So this is what they look like on the bottom. You can see all the roots. So we're gonna be having to do some teasing apart. So the way I like to do it best is to kind of find a natural break point and just start making smaller groupings. And just take your time and be really gentle. And then I'll just keep breaking them down smaller and smaller. And sometimes they'll want to break one way easier than another way. So I'm gonna get a bunch of individuals separated here, and then we will start potting up. Okay, so here we have them all broken up. And what I like to do is try to put similar sizes in one cell pack. And that's because if they're all the same size, this whole cell pack will need potted up all at around the same time, which makes it a little easier to manage. You don't have to like pot some cells up and leave other cells. It just makes life a little smoother and a little easier. So what I am doing here is just using my popsicle stick to kind of push aside a little square that's going to be a little bigger than my block here. These are going to get potted up another time, so I don't need to be too concerned about burying them deep, but you certainly can make your square here quite deep, which actually maybe we will do because they are tomatoes that we're potting up. I would be careful not to go too deep if it was something that didn't like to be planted deep. But tomatoes, like we can plant anywhere up to these cotyledons right now. And then actually by the time these are gonna stretch even more, and by the time they get potted up again, we'll be able to plant even further up the stem. These cotyledons will kind of dry off and fall off, and we'll be able to plant them deeper a second time. But we'll start with this. So I'm just gonna continue getting some holes made here. All right, so I'm gonna start off with some of the larger plants. So this is definitely one. There was a block beside it that didn't have a seed germinate, so I'm gonna make sure I remove that so it's gonna fit in this hole. And I'm just going to make sure it reaches the bottom, just gently. You can use your popsicle stick to just check if you're not sure. And then I'm just gonna backfill and push this soil up against the tomato. Super easy. Get the next one done here. Sometimes I find it, if you have a lot of roots kind of at the bottom and they're not wanting to go in the hole, if you kind of spin it a little bit, they'll coil a little bit, and that will make it easier to get them in the actual hole. So this is going to give these guys a little more room. Definitely their leaves have more space to spread out. And they have their own space now, so their roots are not competing with the others in any way. One of the reasons I like to do soil blocking is I find this to be a much easier process in potting up than something, you know, like our strawberries were. I actually I really enjoy potting up soil blocks. I know a lot of people use soil blocks and plant straight into their gardens, but where I live, I think you have to have your timing right. Like if I were planting these directly in my garden, then my garden would need to be ready, and the temperatures and things, like we would need to be past our frost date. And we are nowhere near that. We are probably 7-ish weeks away from our last frost. And I need this time, I need the head start, if that makes sense. If you're somewhere where it's more mild for a longer season, you might be able to get away with that. But that doesn't work for me. That's not one of the reasons that I personally soil block, although I know it is a reason that a lot of people do it. There, so now we have a 6-pack filled with tomato seedlings. Okay, so we got our tomatoes potted up. I do have a couple of spaces where, like I had 17 San Marzanos, and I have one space left in that cell. But there are a few varieties where I'm only growing 1 or 2, or only had 1 or 2 germinate. And I will fill in these holes as I go, making sure to label them so I know what everything is. But I have my pots ready for these jalapenos, and what I'm going to do for these, so there's 3 of them in this pot. I'm just gonna, about an inch away, tuck my trusty popsicle stick in here and start loosening up the soil and kind of lifting, and get a little closer if I need to, go at it from different angles and see if we can get one to lift out here. So I've got this little guy. I'm gonna support him with my popsicle stick as I pull him out. And I don't need, this soil is not super important, but there I have my little seedling. And I have pre-moistened this soil because I want it to not fall in and cave around on itself. I want to be able to push the sides just like I did in these cells. And I'm going to make this pretty deep because this guy has a really long root. I'm going to make sure it goes down there with my popsicle stick. And I'm going to just kind of hold him where I want him and start pinching the soil together around him. And there we go. There's one little jalapeno seedling. So we'll see if we can get another one. I'll go ahead and make my hole first, I guess, would be easier. See if we can get this guy. Okay, he's got a nice little root system there too. And we'll just put him down, hold him where we want him, and kind of pinch the soil around him and tamp it down. And there's our second little seedling. And here we'll get our final one. We'll make our little hole. Pull this guy up. We can get him out. I think he's got quite a long root too. He's got quite a little root system that's hanging on to the soil, but that's a good thing too. So we'll lower him down into the hole, make sure his roots are tucked in, and then give a little pinch when we're ready. And there we have 3 jalapeno seedlings all potted up and ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed my method and, for potting seedlings up. It's something I do quite a lot of every year, especially, last year and this year where we have seedlings to sell. So pretty soon a lot of these are going to start getting kicked up there because I am running out of space, and those 6 to 8 week bags that I have for the veggies and the flowers have not been touched yet. And this is, other than the beginning initial rush, like with the tomatoes and peppers is always a big seeding time, but this is the second busiest seedling time. So I need to make some space down there. And, space, this takes up this much room. This was like, 40-ish tomato plants, and now they're a whole tray. So this is the time where space requirements kind of grow exponentially, and it's awesome that I can take plants up to the greenhouse as I needed. I don't think tonight is supposed to be like -5 or -6, and tomorrow night as well. But then on Thursday, when I look at the long range forecast, there's no more cold nights that are that cold. Like there might be -1, -2, at least forecasted. I'm sure there will be the odd one. But I'm hoping by then, if we get a night that cold, the days are getting warmer and the greenhouse is gonna hold a little heat a little better. There's already no frost up there, so no worries about that. So the cold tolerant things like the strawberries, definitely those things can start going up there. These I'll wait a little longer on, so long as I have space under the grow lights for them. And then in a couple weeks, these will start going up there too. So. Okay, so we got most of our transplanting done for the day. I still have quite a bit to do, but I'll save that for another time. I did get distracted with dahlias as well, which is not uncommon for me. But I did want to tell the Eclipse story. So we had planned to go to Miramichi in New Brunswick. They were having an event at the airport there. They were going to have like music and food trucks and things like that. And I hadn't realized that you needed tickets. So they kind of wanted to limit how many vehicles were there. I think there were 1,500. They were free tickets, but we didn't know until it was too late. They were already gone, that they were releasing those for that event. So then we thought about still going to Miramichi, but part of what I really wanted out of this experience is I wanted to be with other people watching the eclipse. I wanted to see reactions. I wanted to hear people. I thought it would add to the experience. So we couldn't really find another spot in Miramichi. I mean, I think there were a bunch of people that ended up like, going to a Walmart parking lot type thing. That wasn't really my jam. So there was a really awesome, well, there still is, a Facebook group, New Brunswick Eclipse or something like that, I think is what it's called. But the people in that group were so wonderful and so helpful. And I said in that group one day, like I'm looking for another place to go. We had planned to go to Miramichi, which for reference from us from Nova Scotia, so I'm talking about places that are all kind of on like the eastern side of the province. The western side of the province had a lot of events. That's where Chris Hadfield was speaking, and they were releasing a balloon to be able to stream the eclipse in the event of like cloud cover and stuff like that. But that would add, so to go to Miramichi was about 3 hours from home, a little over. To go to the events on the western side of the province would have put us probably 4 hours plus each way. So that wasn't going to work for us. And I wanted to be as close to the line of totality as I could. So Miramichi was a little past the line, like the center line from where we are. So I started looking at other places and asked that question in the group, and someone suggested, I saw that there was a small town called Rogersville, and I was like, is there anything going on here that anybody knows about or anywhere around there? It was a little closer to us, about half an hour closer to us than Miramichi would have been. And someone got on there and said, about 5 minutes past Rogersville, which is a small town, there's an even smaller town, I would call it a village, that's having an event at their community center. So Moncton is one of the larger cities in New Brunswick. They were sending a radio crew to this Collett. It was called Collett, sorry. They were sending a radio crew to Collett, to this community center, and we decided we were gonna go there. It was just like, you know, a small town community center. They were gonna have like a canteen. They were, you know, 3 people from the community were, you know, playing banjos and providing the entertainment. And it was like bring your own chairs and set up in their yard type thing. And I was like, okay, that's perfect. Let's go there. So we went there, and it was everything that I wanted it to be. So these are like that coast of the province there's a lot of French communities in that province. So this was a French community that we ended up in. But everyone was absolutely lovely. You couldn't have asked for nicer people. I heard primarily French, but I did hear some other English speaking people while we were there. There was a CBC radio or CBC TV crew there when we arrived. They had police directing traffic and stuff. We parked on the side of the road. We were there about probably right around an hour before the eclipse started, and totality was about an hour into the eclipse. So we were there for a few hours. And it was awesome. I'll show you clips and some photos that we took. I think the last 20 minutes leading up to totality, the colors of the light started changing, and obviously it started to get darker. It was more like, you know, golden hour in the evening, right? Like it was dusky but not dark. It was still very bright. And the 3 or 4 seconds before totality, it's like someone turns a dimmer all the way down all of a sudden, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was very eerie. Like on the way home, Jarrett and I were talking about it, and I was like, it's like, you know, because the sun is black, right? Like it's not something you're accustomed to seeing. And I was like, it's like sci-fi or something. Like it felt very otherworldly. I started crying, of course. Jarrett took a picture. I'll show you that. And the atmosphere of the people was just wonderful. And where we were at it ended up being closer to the path of totality than Miramichi was. And so we got 3 minutes and 17 seconds of totality. And Jarrett made a comment as soon as the sun started to come out from behind the moon again, or as soon as the moon moved away from the sun. Jarrett made the comment of like, I thought this was supposed to be 3 minutes or more than 3 minutes. And it did not, it felt like seconds. It felt like seconds. It was amazing. I will definitely try to see another one of these in my lifetime. There won't be another one in Atlantic Canada until 2078, I believe. I will be long dead probably by then. Or I will be a very ancient woman. But I told you, like, I'm not opposed to planning vacations around where there might be a solar eclipse in the future. I definitely want to see another one in my lifetime. It was amazing. It's something that I'll never forget. And I'm really, really glad Jarrett was willing to go. It wasn't really his thing on the way there, but on the way back, he did admit that it was worth the drive, and he was really glad we went. So, I hope you got to experience the eclipse wherever you were. I'd love to hear your totality stories, or even just your partial stories. My parents ended up, staying, where we live, and they went up the mountain on a hill, and there was a bunch of locals up there. My mom and her friends carried on. They had a good time. Dad and his friends had a good time. And I know a lot of people stayed put and stayed home, and that's really cool too. But I am so glad that we made the journey, 2.5 hour drive. The way home took a little longer because there was a lot of traffic on the road, but people were respectful. It was really nice. And it was nice to have an event. Like, someone made a comment in that group either today or last night about it was nice to see like the entire province come together for something. And it's the happiest the province had been, like, and as long as they could remember. Like, to put aside, opinions and just, the topics of the day, and just all experience a rare event like this. It was really quite special. So, I want to hear your stories. I want to see your pictures. We didn't really bother trying to take really good pictures. We just had our phones, and we ended up getting some really memorable ones. So, definitely I want to see those, and tell me all about it. And thank you for having the patience to listen to a topic aside from gardening on this channel. I really appreciate it, and I thank you for watching as always. I hope you come back, and we'll see you next time.